Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we are opening up a topic that I think, if we are being totally honest with ourselves, every single person listening to this right now has felt in their chest, in their stomach, or keeping them staring at the ceiling at 3 a.m.
Oh, yeah.
We aren't just talking about stress. We are talking about the absolute tyranny of anxiety.
It really is the defining struggle of our time, isn't it? And today, to guide us through this, we are doing a comprehensive deep dive into The Answer to Anxiety by Joyce Meyer.
Right.
Now, I want to set the table here properly because I know what some of you might be thinking. You hear Joyce Meyer, you hear anxiety, and you might think this is going to be a collection of platitudes. Just think happy thoughts or just pray it away.
Exactly. The don't worry, be happy approach, which, spoiler alert, never actually works when you're in a panic spiral.
Never, and that is not what this source text is about at all. Meyer presents this not as some fluffy self-help guide, but as a battle plan. I mean, she uses very specific language.
She does.
She calls anxiety a tyranny. It's a dictator. It tells you what to do, it consumes your resources, and it occupies your territory. And she argues that to break a tyranny, you don't need a sentiment. You need a formula, a spiritual and a practical formula.
I love that framing. Tyranny feels so accurate. It feels like an invasion of your own mind,
It is.
But before we get into the formula, and she does have a very specific four-part formula, we really need to pause and define exactly what we are talking about. Because Meyer makes a really critical distinction right at the beginning of the book that I think is responsible for keeping this conversation safe and grounded.
Yes, this is the disclaimer, and it is vital.
Yeah.
We have to distinguish between the different types of anxiety. Meyer is very, very clear that there is a difference between clinical anxiety and what she calls daily anxiety, or the worry that stems from life's trials.
Break that down for us, because I think people often conflate the two, or they feel shame about one versus the other.
Well, they do. So clinical anxiety, this is where we are talking about something that may be rooted in, like unbalanced hormones, long-term chemical imbalances, or some deep-seated physiological issues.
Something in the hardware, not just the software.
Exactly. And Meyer explicitly states, and this is so important, that if you are dealing with that level of clinical anxiety, it may require medical attention, it might require professional therapy, it might require medication.
So the message here is not throw away your pills and just read this book.
Absolutely not. There's zero shame in getting medical help. I mean, if your thyroid is off, you take medicine. If your brain chemistry is off, you take medicine. Meyer is crystal clear on that.
Good.
What this deep dive is focusing on is that second category, the worry, the futfulness, the what-if game we play every single day, the anxiety that comes from living in a broken world with, bills and health scares and difficult people.
Okay, so we are looking at the lifestyle anxiety, if you will, the kind that creeps in. But even removing the clinical side, the scale of this problem is, well, it's terrifying.
It is immense. The text cites statistics from the Anxiety and Depression Association of America, and I honestly had to reread them a few times to let it sink in.
Give us the numbers.
We are talking about 40 million adults in the United States alone.
40 million. That is, what, that's nearly 1 in 5 adults?
Yeah.
That can't be right.
It's roughly 18.1% of the population every single year. And you have to remember, that's just the people who meet the criteria for a disorder.
Right.
That doesn't count the millions of people who are just functionally stressed or losing sleep 3 nights a week but haven't seen a doctor about it. But here is the statistic that actually made me stop reading for a second.
What was it?
Out of those 40 million people suffering from a diagnosable anxiety disorder, only 36.9% receive treatment.
Wait, say that again.
36.9%.
So almost 2/3 of people are just white-knuckling it.
Exactly. They are suffering in silence, they are trying to manage it on their own, or they think it's just normal to feel like you're vibrating with stress all the time.
Why do you think that gap is so huge? Is it cost? Is it the stigma around it?
The source suggests a few things, but I think a huge part of it is the normalization of stress. We've somehow convinced ourselves that feeling like you're about to explode is just the cost of doing business in the modern world.
Oh, for sure. We wear busy like a badge of honor.
We do. But Meyer points out that this silence is dangerous because anxiety is so often linked with depression. Almost half of those diagnosed with depression are also diagnosed with an anxiety disorder. It's a tangled web.
And it's not just adults, is it? The text mentioned teenagers. That really hit me.
That's the statistic that hurts the most. 25.1% of teenagers, a quarter of our kids are dealing with this. I mean, that explains so much about what we see in schools today,
It really does.
And for older adults, the anxiety is often triggered by traumatic events, a fall, an acute illness. It attacks every demographic. No one is immune.
That sets the stage perfectly. This is a massive crisis. But what makes this book so interesting, and maybe what gives it so much credibility, is that Joyce Meyer isn't writing this from some ivory tower.
Not at all.
She shares a very personal story in the introduction that I think really changes how you read the rest of the book.
Yeah, this really caught my attention. She talks about December 2017. Now, keep in mind, Joyce Meyer is a global figure. She runs a massive ministry. She is known as this powerhouse of stability and faith. But she admits that in December 2017, she completely fell apart.
She uses the phrase exploding and imploding. That is a violent image.
It is exploding and imploding. It implies that the pressure was coming from the inside and the outside simultaneously. It was a result of years of unreasonable stress. She talks about how she was trying to manage everything, trying to do it all, ignoring the warning signs her body was giving her, and eventually her body just said, no more. She became extremely ill.
How long was she out for?
It took her 18 months to recover. A year and a half of her life was derailed because of this crash.
18 months. That is a long road back. But, and this is the pivot point in her narrative, she calls that illness a blessing in disguise.
Which is a very hard perspective to have when you are sick and can't work.
Right. Usually we call illness a curse. Why a blessing?
Because it forced a change. She realized that she had moved from trusting God to managing stress. She realized that she was trying to solve her problems through human reasoning and worry, which she argues only leads to frustration.
So she was white-knuckling it too.
She was. The illness forced her to stop. It forced her to pivot from managing to actually addressing the root cause. It forced her to apply the very formula she writes about in this book.
So she had to take her own medicine. Literally.
Exactly. And that makes the advice grounded. It's not theoretical, it's battle-tested.
Okay, let's unpack this formula. Because she says the Bible gives a very understandable recipe for this. It's based on Philippians 4.67.
This is the anchor for the entire book. Everything we discussed today hangs on these verses. It's a 4-step breakdown.
Be anxious for nothing.
Yeah, easy for you to say.
Right. Step 2, pray about everything. Step 3, be thankful. And step 4, the result is enjoying peace.
Be anxious for nothing. It sounds great on a coffee mug, but as a life strategy, that sounds impossible. It feels like telling a drowning person, just stop drowning.
It does feel that way initially. But that is why we are going to break down each of those steps. Because she isn't saying suppress your anxiety, she is giving a mechanism to displace it. So let's dive into section 1, the nature of anxiety.
She starts by defining what anxiety actually is. And I think my favorite definition she gives is that anxiety is spending today trying to figure out tomorrow.
Or fearing tomorrow. It's a misallocation of resources. You are using today's energy for tomorrow's problems.
It's like you're borrowing trouble from the future.
You are. And there is a quote in the text from Corrie ten Boom, and let's just pause there. Corrie ten Boom survived a Nazi concentration camp. She watched her sister die in that camp. So when she talked about worry, she isn't talking about traffic. She is talking about life and death.
She has the ultimate credibility on this topic. What's the quote?
She said, worrying is carrying tomorrow's load with today's strength carrying 2 days at once.
Oof. Carrying 2 days at once, that explains the exhaustion, doesn't it?
It does. It's simple math. You were designed to carry 1 day's burden. If you pick up tomorrow's burden and put it on top of today's, your knees are going to buckle. The text points out the futility of it. Meyer references Matthew 6.27, asking, can any one of you by worrying add a single hour to your life?
The answer obviously is no. You might subtract a few hours due to the stress, but you certainly aren't adding any.
Exactly. She uses that analogy of the rocking chair, right?
Yes. Worry is like rocking in a rocking chair all day.
It keeps you very busy. You are moving back and forth. You are expending energy. You are sweating. But at the end of the day, you haven't gone anywhere. You are in the exact same spot geographically.
I feel personally attacked by that analogy. So if we are stuck in the rocking chair, how do we get out? She brings up this technique called bird watching. And she doesn't mean buying binoculars and a field guide.
No, she means literally looking at nature, specifically birds, as instructed in Matthew 6. The logic is fascinating. She points out that birds aren't nervous. They aren't flying around having panic attacks about where the next worm is coming from.
They're not building little bird 401ks.
They're not building storehouses, no. They wait for provision.
Okay, I have to play devil's advocate here because I've heard this sermon 1,000 times. Look at the birds. And my immediate reaction is always, the bird doesn't have a mortgage. The bird doesn't have a kid who needs braces. The bird doesn't have to save for retirement. It feels a little reductive to compare complex human economics to a sparrow.
That is a totally fair pushback. I think everyone feels that initially.
Hmm.
And if you read it superficially, it does sound dismissive. Just chirp and be happy. But Meyer digs a bit deeper into the logic of the metaphor. It's not about the complexity of the problems. It's about the value of the individual.
Unpack that. What do you mean by relative value?
The argument Meyer makes, based on the text, is this. God created a system that sustains the birds. He feeds them. Now, are you a human being? Not much more valuable than a bird.
I would hope so, yes.
That's the crux. It's a clash between the logic of faith and the logic of fear. Fear says, I have to control everything because I am alone. Faith says, if the system God takes care of the low-value items like birds, and I am a high-value item, then logically the system will take care of me.
So it's a competence argument, like God is good at his job.
It's a value argument. If you take care of your lawn, surely you will take care of your children. It's asking you to trust your position in the hierarchy of creation.
I see. So it's not saying your bills aren't real. It's saying your anxiety about the bills is a misunderstanding of your value. That's a shift in perspective.
Yeah.
And she couples this with the one day at a time strategy. This is where she gets really relatable again.
Oh, yeah.
She lists out all the stuff breaking in her house while she was writing this book.
It was a comedy of errors, wasn't it? A broken generator, water leaking into the house every time the wind blew, a dead golf cart battery.
A constant stream of irritations, and then the big one, her health issues with her eyes.
Right, the cataracts and the dry eyes. And we need to pause on this because this is a specific type of anxiety loop. She needed cataract surgery to see, but the surgery is known to make dry eyes worse. And if her eyes got drier, she would be in constant pain.
It's a classic catch-22. Damned if you do, damned if you don't. A perfect storm for anxiety.
And the significance of her sharing that is to show that the goal of this deep dive isn't to reach a state where you have no problems. Even the expert, the author, has problems. The goal isn't a problem-free life. It's a worry-free response to those problems.
She brings up the story of the manna from the Bible to explain this daily concept.
Yes, the Israelites in the desert. God provided this food, manna, every morning. But the rule was strict. You can only gather enough for today.
And what happened if they tried to be responsible and save some for tomorrow? You know, build a little emergency fund of manna.
It rotted. The text says it bred worms and stank.
That is such a gross but perfect image. The stored up worry just turns into rot. It becomes this disgusting thing in your pantry.
Exactly. The lesson is that grace is daily. You get the strength for today. You don't get tomorrow's strength today. If you try to carry tomorrow's load today, you are doing it without the grace or strength required, and that is why you crumble. You are trying to eat tomorrow's manna, but you don't have it yet.
So we stop carrying 2 days at once. That leads us into section 2, where she starts giving us the actual keys to overcoming anxiety. Key number 1 is remember past victories.
This is a cognitive strategy as much as a spiritual one. When you are facing a new problem, your brain tends to panic and say, I've never handled this before. This is the end.
Catastrophic thinking.
Total catastrophic thinking. Meyer says, look back. Look at the data. Look at the old problems that were solved.
And she tells a really intense story here about her breast cancer diagnosis. This was over 30 years ago.
It's a powerful narrative. She went in for a routine checkup. They found a fast-growing tumor. The recommendation was immediate removal.
And at the time, her ministry was brand new. They were financially unstable, just scraping by.
Right. She talks about the fear, not just for her life, which is terrifying enough, but for the collapse of everything she had built. If she couldn't work, the ministry couldn't pay its bills. She describes waking up early in the morning, feeling that wave of absolute fear just wash over her.
I know that feeling.
But then she felt God speak to her. He said he would take care of her, and that became her anchor. But here's the cool part, the outcome. The surgery happens. The tumor is removed. The lymph nodes are clear. No spread.
Victory number 1, a huge one.
A massive one. But then the financial worry kicks in. She's at home recovering. Bills are looming.
And then the doorbell rings.
The doorbell rings. A man they don't even know is standing there. He hands her husband a check for $10,000.
$10,000. In the late 80s or early 90s, that is a huge amount of money.
It covered everything. And her point is, when she faces anxiety now, like with her eyes, she pulls that memory out. She uses it as a counterweight. She says, God, I trust you. And she uses that history to circuit break the panic.
It's like she's building a legal case for why she should trust God. Exhibit A, the tumor. Exhibit B, the check.
That's a great way to put it. You're using your own history as evidence against your current fear.
I like that. Okay, key number 2. Fight the good fight of faith. This implies that relaxing isn't passive, it's a fight.
Yeah, this is a big mindset shift. Meyer uses a gym analogy here, which I think is very helpful because everyone understands the pain of a workout,
The good kind of pain.
the good kind.
Yeah.
It uses faith as like a muscle. How do you build muscle? You have to work it. You have to strain it. Sometimes you have to tear it slightly so it rebuilds stronger.
So when we are in a waiting period or things are tough, that's just gym time. We're on the spiritual leg press machine.
That is the workout. If God delays an answer, he isn't ignoring you. He is stretching your faith muscles. She suggests actually talking to yourself during this, literally saying out loud, Joyce, you don't have to worry about this.
I do that sometimes. Okay, get it together. It feels a little crazy, but it helps.
It does. It's about replacing the negative thought with a specific promise. But then comes the hardest question in the world when you're in that gym. When?
When, God, when? That is the universal question. I trust you, but could you hurry up a little bit?
Yes. And Meyer's answer, referencing Galatians, is due time.
Which is never as soon as we want it to be.
Never. But she argues that due time is the right time, and that fighting the fight means trusting the timing even when it hurts.
That leads perfectly into section 3, which is all about control, trust, and love. Key number 3 is believe God is in control. She talks about something called the Elijah complex.
This refers to the prophet Elijah, who at one point had a total meltdown. He told God, I am the only one left. Everyone else has betrayed you. I'm all alone.
We have all felt that. I'm the only one suffering like this. No one understands what I'm going through.
It's so isolating. But God's rebuttal to Elijah was, essentially, actually, I have 7,000 other people who haven't bowed to the enemy. You aren't alone at all.
It's a reality check. You're not the main character in a tragedy.
Exactly. Meyer shares a story about receiving a text from a woman battling cancer who was in severe pain. Yet that woman was texting Joyce to say she was praying for Joyce's eye surgery.
Wow. That puts things in perspective immediately.
It does. It gets your eyes off yourself. Meyer defines despair as to be utterly without a way. But she refutes this with the concept of God as the waymaker. There's always a way, even if you don't see it yet.
Okay, key number 4 is trust God. And to illustrate this, she tells this legend about a mouse and a cat. I have to share this because it's hilarious, but it's also a deep psychological study.
It's a great fable. Let's walk through it.
So there is a mouse who is terrified of a cat, just paralyzed with fear. A magician, or in the legend, some force, decides to help him out. He says, I'll turn you into a cat so you won't be afraid. Poof, now he's a cat.
Problem solved, right?
You'd think. But now that he's a cat, he realizes, oh no, there's a dog outside. And he is just as terrified of the dog as he was of the cat. So he runs back to the magician. Make me a dog.
Escalation. I see where this is going.
Exactly. He becomes a dog, but then the dog sees a lion, panic, so he becomes a lion. Now he's the king of the jungle, 500 pounds of muscle, nothing can hurt him.
Surely he's safe now. He's at the top of the food chain.
Nope. He sees a hunter with a gun, and he is back to trembling. Finally, the magician just sighs and turns him back into a mouse.
Why? Why not make him the hunter?
The magician says, I cannot help you because you have the heart of a mouse.
Oof, that stings. The heart of a mouse.
It really does. It's brutal.
But think about that in the context of our careers or our finances. How often do we think, if I just get that promotion, I'll stop worrying about money? If I just get married, I'll stop worrying about being alone?
We think the external change will fix the internal anxiety. We just need to become a bigger, stronger animal.
Exactly. We keep asking the magician to change our form. Make me a CEO. Make me a homeowner. But Meyer's point here is devastatingly simple. If you don't change the trust level inside your heart, you will just be a CEO who is terrified of the board. You'll be a homeowner who is terrified of the interest rates. You're just a tiger with a mouse's heart.
That is profound. You cannot solve an internal problem with an external solution.
Precisely. And this is where Meyer addresses the why question too. Why is this happening to me? She advises that we stop asking why, because it's often unanswerable and just keeps you stuck. Instead, ask, what now?
That's more practical, more forward-looking. What do I do now?
Or, verify if you've opened a door to trouble yourself through disobedience or unforgiveness. But if you haven't, then just trust that God is in control and focus on the what now.
Key number 5 brings it back to the emotional core. Choose to believe God loves you.
This is deeply personal for Meyer, and you can feel it in the writing. She brings up 1 John 4:18, perfect love casts out fear. But she contextualizes it with her background. She was sexually abused by her father. She was abandoned by her mother.
That kind of trauma sets up a belief system from childhood, a really dangerous one.
It sets up the belief, if I don't take care of myself, no one will. And that is the root of so much anxiety. It's a survival mechanism that you carry into adulthood where it's no longer serving you.
So overcoming anxiety isn't just about relaxing. It's about moving from survival mode to believing you are a beloved child who will be taken care of.
Exactly. If you truly believe you are loved and watched over by the creator of the universe, the need to hyper-control everything, to be that mouse trying to become a hunter, it just diminishes.
Now we move to section 4. This is where the rubber meets the road. The mechanics of prayer.
And she starts with the approach. She notices that people often say, well, I guess all I can do is pray, as if prayer is the spare tire you pull out when the wheels have fallen off.
The last resort. I've tried everything that works, now I'll try prayer.
Right. She argues it must be the first response. She quotes Rick Warren. The more you pray, the less you'll panic.
I like that. It's proactive, not reactive. But she gets specific. She says we need to make definite requests.
Yes. Don't just say, God bless me. That's too vague. She uses her eye surgery as the example again. She didn't just pray, help my eyes. She acknowledged the medical impossibility, that the surgery usually makes dry eyes worse, and she specifically asked for a miracle where the surgery would make them better.
She asked for the impossible specific.
Correct. But there is a condition, and this is a tough one for people to swallow. This is the fine print of the chapter, Mark 11.25. She links answered prayer directly to forgiveness.
Okay, let's pause here. Because this is where the learner in me gets skeptical. It feels transactional. Like, I won't help you unless you play nice with your brother. Is that what she's saying?
I get that. It can feel that way. But she frames it more like, well, think of it like plumbing.
Plumbing. Explain that.
Imagine your spirit is a pipe. You want grace and peace to flow into you from God. But forgiveness is the outflow. If you block the outflow, if you cork up the pipe because you refuse to let grace flow out to someone who hurt you, you physically stop the flow of grace coming in.
So it's not that God is refusing to give it. It's that you've clogged the system. You've got a spiritual hairball in the drain.
You've got a spiritual hairball.
Yeah.
Exactly. You can't be a reservoir of bitterness and a river of peace at the same time. And she admits this is brutal. She talks about how hard it was to forgive her father after the abuse. This isn't forgive the guy who cut you off in traffic. This is forgive the person who ruined your childhood.
That's a heavy ask. Does she offer a practical way to do that? Because just forgive is so much easier said than done.
She does. She distinguishes between the decision and the feeling. She says, you pray, God, I decide to forgive. I'm not waiting to feel like it because I might never feel like it.
Yeah.
You make the legal transaction in your heart, and you let God handle the emotions later.
She also talks about simplicity. I think we often feel like we need to speak in King James English for it to count. Thou art.
Thee and thou. No, she deconstructs that religious tone. She says prayer is just talking to a friend. She breaks down the Lord's Prayer not as a chant, but as a checklist of components. Acknowledge God, align with His will, ask for daily provision, deal with forgiveness, ask for protection.
And she warns against heaping up empty phrases.
Matthew 6.7. God isn't impressed by your vocabulary or how long you can talk about taking a breath. He wants sincerity, not a filibuster.
She actually provides a checklist of hindrances to prayer, things that block it. We mentioned forgiveness, but there are others.
She lists prayerlessness itself, which sounds obvious, but sometimes we complain about a problem to everyone except God. She tells a story about complaining about an employee constantly until she realized she had never actually prayed for him.
That's a call out. I feel that one.
She also mentions hidden sin and wrong motives. She admits that early in her ministry, she prayed for growth just so she would look important.
She wanted the clout, the number.
Exactly. And God didn't answer that prayer until her motive changed to actually helping people. And finally, she lists pride. Just thinking we can solve the problem ourselves.
That leads to the concept of casting cares. She uses a fishing analogy here.
The visual is casting a line. You have to physically throw the burden away from you and onto God. She also warns against the rescuer trap.
What is the rescuer trap?
It's when we try to fix everyone else's problems. If you are always swooping in to save people, you might be preventing God from teaching them a necessary lesson. You are carrying a load that isn't yours to carry.
Let's move to section 5. This is surprising to me as a weapon against anxiety, but she talks about the power of thanksgiving.
It's massive. She quotes Psalm 100.4, be thankful and say so. It's not enough to just feel it. You have to articulate it. You have to speak it out.
She draws a link between complaining and staying stuck.
A huge one. She uses the Israelites again. An 11-day journey turned into 40 years in the wilderness. Why? Because they complained the entire time. She argues that complaining quenches the spirit. It's like pouring water on the fire inside you.
She suggests an exercise here, the lists exercise.
This came from a time she was annoyed with her husband, Dave. God told her to make a like list and a dislike list about him.
That sounds incredibly dangerous. If I made a dislike list about my spouse, I would hide it in a vault.
It's risky.
Yeah.
But she found the like list was actually longer. She just had been focusing entirely on the dislike column. The application is, when you are anxious, count blessings. As Hannah Woodall Smith said, the soul that complains can find comfort in nothing.
She also talks about the glad game. There is this friends list of gratitude in the book that is just, it really reframes reality. Let me read a few of these because they are challenging.
Go for it. They're great.
I am thankful for tight clothes because it means I have enough food.
That's a hard one to swallow when you're trying to zip up your jeans. I mean, come on.
Right. I am thankful for a mess to clean because it means I have a home.
Reframing the burden as a blessing. That's powerful.
I am thankful for paying bills because it means I have money. And here is the kicker. I am thankful for spilled coffee because it means I have enough to make another cup.
That last one is next level. That's Jedi level gratitude.
When I spill coffee, I am not thankful. I am looking for a paper towel and swearing under my breath.
But that's the point. She calls it the discipline of gratitude. It is not an emotion. It is a choice. You are defeating the enemy by refusing to be upset about the little things.
She brings up the story of the 10 lepers from Luke 17.
Yes, Jesus healed 10 men of a horrible, isolating disease. Only one came back to say thank you.
1 out of 10. That's a 90% failure rate on gratitude.
It is. And Jesus asked, where are the other 9? The implication is that God notices when we take the miracle and run. It suggests that gratitude is rare, but precious.
Section 6 takes us to the destination. Peace and self-acceptance. She calls peace an inheritance.
Based on John 14.27, Jesus said, peace I leave with you. It's like a bequest in a will. It belongs to you legally, spiritually. But you have to enter into it. You have to claim it.
She talks about peace stealers.
These are your triggers. Broken items, rude people, traffic, financial setbacks. You have to identify what steals your peace so you can guard against it.
There's a beautiful story she tells here about a painting contest. The painting of peace. I think this visualization helps a lot.
It's a classic illustration, but so good. There was a contest for the best painting of peace. One artist painted a calm lake, blue sky, perfect reflection. It was cliche. It was what we think peace looks like.
A vacation brochure. Zero conflict.
Exactly. But that wasn't the winner.
No. The winner was a painting of a rugged mountain, an angry dark sky, lightning striking, a storm raging, a waterfall crashing down.
It looked like chaos, like the opposite of peace.
But in the corner, in a crack in the rock, near that crashing waterfall, there was a bush. And on that bush was a bird sitting on her nest, completely calm.
That gives me chills every time.
Why does that define peace better than the calm lake?
Because the lake represents circumstantial peace. Peace when everything is going right. Anyone can have that. But the bird in the storm represents peace that passes understanding. It is not the absence of a storm. It is calm within the storm. If you have peace when the lightning is striking, that is supernatural. That is what Meyer is offering.
She talks about casting down imaginations. What does that mean in practical terms?
It's from 2 Corinthians. It's about mental warfare. She defines a stronghold as a lie from the enemy that has entrenched itself in your mind. For her, it was, I will always be second-rate because I was abused.
So casting down means actively rejecting that thought, not just letting it live in your head.
Yes. Replacing the imagination of disaster with the Word of God. Instead of imagining the worst-case scenario, you actively, forcefully imagine God's promise coming true.
She also touches on anxiety about ourselves. Perfectionism.
Oh, this is a huge source of anxiety, especially for high achievers. The pressure to be flawless. She clarifies that when the Bible says be perfect, the Greek word usually implies mature or complete, not flawless performance.
She lists some leaders from the Bible who are definitely not perfect.
Not even close.
Yeah.
Jeremiah thought he was too young. Moses argued with God that he couldn't speak well. Gideon was hiding in a wine press out of fear. And Joyce herself describes herself as a total mess when God called her.
The takeaway being?
God looks for availability, not ability. He can fix the ability part. He needs you to be available to him.
And finally, self-acceptance. She tells a funny story about trying to be a domestic goddess.
Well, laughs. The lopsided shorts, yes. She tried to sew shorts for her husband, Dave. She tried to garden. She tried to can vegetables. She wanted to be the regular woman. But she just wasn't. She was called to teach and lead.
And the shorts were lopsided.
I think the pockets were longer than the legs. It was a complete disaster. But the resolution was her making peace with her unique personality. She had to embrace who God made her to be rather than being anxious about who she wasn't.
We are coming to the end of the deep dive. In the outro, we have to find out what happened with the eyes. That was the anxiety thread through the whole book.
She gives an update. Remember, she prayed that specific prayer that the surgery wouldn't make her eyes drier, but actually make them better.
Yeah.
The result was that her eyes were actually less dry after the surgery. It was a specific answer to a specific request.
That is a great note to end on. It validates the whole formula.
It does. So, to summarize the formula Meyer presents, be anxious for nothing, plus prayer, plus thanksgiving. Peace.
And she reminds us that persistence is key. The devil wants you to give up if it doesn't work in 5 minutes.
Right. Exodus 14.1. The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still.
So, here's our challenge to you, the learner. Identify one peace stealer in your life today. Is it the traffic? Is it the news? Is it a specific person? Identify it and hand it over. Try the formula.
And remember, peace is not a place with no noise, it's the bird in the storm.
Thanks for diving in with us. We'll see you next time.